Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. What next for Manchester United as we face... look, all I'm going to say is that Manchester United, we're never going to be the same again. It's never going to be the same again. We're on the edge of something that will change the course of Manchester United forever in a way that we've never known before. So what next? Qatar have bid. We reacted to that last night. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has bid for Manchester United as well. Do we just have two bids? What happens next? Sir Jim will not give in, and Qatar are very determined. What I'm told this morning is that there is a third bid for Manchester United. There may well be a fourth bid. Who is that third bid? We'll get into that as well. Lots to get into. I've consumed and read so much over the last 12 hours. I think some of the most interesting stuff is the people who are very quiet, who are normally very, very vocal. And I think I know why they're being quiet, because they don't want to be pinned down for something they say now, but then go with later on. There's so much to digest. The first thing I just want to say, though, as well, is that there is a backdrop to to real life and these earthquakes that took place in Turkey and Syria. The really sad news that Christian Atsu has been pronounced dead this morning, obviously passed away in those earthquakes. One person of over 45,000 people who died. And I just want to just say that, there's a very big tragedy and unfolding over in Turkey and Syria, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with everybody involved in that. And as I said a week ago, we're looking at ways that we can get involved to help that recovery of that situation, which is not about today, it's about tomorrow and the next few months as well. But very, very sad news. And I think that obviously Christian was just one person in thousands that have passed away, but it's still very, very sad news for football, and that there's a much bigger picture there as well. So our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in there, and do what you can, obviously. When will we know the new owners who get Manchester United as Darren Mulaney? Well, we're going to get into that, but first of all, let me just tell you, we weren't live for this last night. This came in last night after we were live, and it came in from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, his camp. What the fuck's going on here? Stupid computer. Right, this is what just in. Ineos have bid for Manchester United. This was last night. This was about 10 o'clock last night. So I'm just reading what came out then. Ineos have bid for Manchester United. The bid has been put in. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has tabled his bid for Manchester United. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has told the Rain Group that he can be the long-term custodian for the club after receiving Wall Street backing. A source close to Ineos has said Sir Jim Ratcliffe's aim is to be a long-term custodian of Manchester United and set the standard for a progressive approach to club ownership. As locally born, he wants to put the Manchester back into Manchester United. Sources close to the Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid also say that any money borrowed to fund the takeover of Man United will be borne by the Ineos Group rather than the club, meaning no fresh debt will be added to the balance. Mike Keegan, who's been very close to this, said there may well be 2 or 3 rounds of bidding for Manchester United, but the Qataris are confident that they will prevail for their bid. And it's interesting as well because I just looking around on social media, there's a lot of things coming in. Like Miguel Delaney, who's a journalist, says the Qatari bid for United would be sports washing. And ludicrously make the Premier League the most overt area for their particular political rivalry with Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. It should be a wake-up call, but how money does football need? Who is seeking to tackle these questions? Well, that's a very noble article from Miguel Delaney. I'd love to have a chat with him about it because obviously he's got a strong opinion there, and I don't necessarily have an issue with the accusation of sports washing. I can see where he's coming from. But ultimately, why is it that Manchester United are always the club that has to be stopped? Like, no one stopped Man City, no one stopped Newcastle, no one stopped PSG, nobody stopped investment from the Middle East into the UK. I guarantee Miguel Delaney has got products, investments that have a major touch point with the Middle East. It's all right being a moral crusader, but it's a bit like the person who doesn't want a carbon footprint, so cycles to London instead of getting the train or a plane. The minute you get on a train and the minute you get on a plane, you're a bit of a hypocrite. So I get that. I get that argument, and it's something I'm struggling with as well. And I've got good friends and people who are saying they don't want this Qatar ownership of Manchester United. But I think the horse is bolted. I think the horse is bolted, and Manchester United saying no to Qatar doesn't mean Liverpool will, or Arsenal will, or anybody else will. So why are Man United being held up as they can't buy Man United? They'll go and buy Arsenal. They'll go and buy Liverpool. And will they not be bought? And we'll just be sat there as moral crusaders going, wow, at least we didn't get bought. Unless it's a collective no, then why do Man United have to say no? That's my point. I'm like, why are we... I can see the disappointment in people's faces. Like I say, I've been watching a lot of stuff. I've been reading a lot of stuff. And some people are really disappointed about this bid and they're really against it. And I'm not here to tell them they're wrong. No, not far from it. Maybe they're right. But there is a hypocrisy to it. I've just put a video up on That's Football where basically asking rivals for their opinion because this is the United stand. And I've said, look, my big problem with Newcastle and my big problem with Man City, and I always admitted it, was bitterness and jealousy. I knew that on a footballing level, they were going to be absolutely fantastic now. And there's not a lot that you can do about that, really. But, it is what it is. But what I would say is that something I saw today, and I can't remember where I saw it, very, very interesting. I can't remember where I've seen it, and I really wish I could find it for you because it was quite interesting. Basically, in a summary, it went something like this. Sir Jim Radcliffe tried to buy Chelsea and was a Chelsea season ticket holder. He's constantly pumping on about Manchester and England for England and Manchester for Manchester. He is going to take on some level of debt. There is no clear plan of what he will do when he gets United. Is he going to rebuild a stadium? Has he got the money to invest? You contrast that with Qatar. The person who's put a bid in is a Man United fan. They've already said they're going to build amazing facilities, infrastructure, and basically make him the biggest club in the world. Make your choice. And that, I think, is unfair. I think that's unfair to say... Look, I wasn't aware of these quotes until last night. Somebody sent me them. So Jim Radcliffe, when he tried to buy Chelsea, said that, it's difficult to get to Man United games. I've got a Chelsea season ticket holder. I go and watch the games. I've got split loyalties. Look, people get very funny about that. I used to go and watch Forest games when I was 8, and I get called a Forest fan. We've got Sir Jim Radcliffe who wants to buy Manchester United, and a lot of the local fans want him to buy Man United, who is publicly admitting, as a man, he's been to watch Chelsea and he's got split loyalties. And yet I got to watch Forest as a kid, and my dad supports Chelsea and I support Man United, but we lived in Nottingham. He used to take me to watch football, and I'm a Forest fan. And yet somebody's trying to buy our club, and the same people who call me a Forest fan, oh, we want Sir Jim because he's local. Yeah, and admits he had split loyalties and went to watch Chelsea as a grown man. So the contradiction is ridiculous. I personally couldn't give a shit that he went to watch Chelsea. That doesn't bother me. I quite like the fact that he's, he knows the area, that he is basically a self-made billionaire, that, he knows sport. He's got a good reputation in sport. I've got no problem with Sir Jim Radcliffe buying the club, but it's not our choice to make either. And I think that it is getting a little bit like people think it's their choice to make. Journalists will write what they want to write. You will write what you want to write. I will say what I want to say. Other people will say what they want to say. But it doesn't make any of us right, and it doesn't make any of us wrong. I think most importantly, we need to focus on what's next. What's next is Qatar have bid, Sir Jim have bid. They've both been very public in what they want to do. Sir Jim Radcliffe is saying that he's got the money and it won't be debt put onto the club, but he is going to take debt to buy the club. That's been admitted. Qatar is saying there will be no debt. They'll clear the debt. They don't want to make any money out of the club. They just want to make Manchester United great again. They're the two bids. The third bid, and I've got this on good authority that there is a third bid. Nobody really knows at the moment whether that third bid's gone in. Nobody can really understand why it's not public, considering Sir Jim and Qatar have. And if you've got a good bid, why would you not go public? Because I think the fans are thirsty for a third bid. I saw it with Sir Jim in the summer. Everybody wanted Sir Jim Radcliffe in the summer. This is how... It's amazing, isn't it? Even if you assess your own mind, it's amazing how opinions change. In the summer, we're bidding for Arnautovic and Rabiot, and then Sir Jim Radcliffe wants to buy the club, and everyone's like, Sir Jim, Sir Jim, Sir Jim. Everyone's really excited. 6 months later, Qatar want to buy the club. Oh, I don't want Sir Jim, I want Qatar now. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but that is true. That is true. 99.9% of the fan base wanted Sir Jim Ratcliffe in August because it was way better than the Glazers. 6 months later, is it 77% want Qatar and they don't want Jim anymore? In 6 months. Shows you how you can change opinions. That third bid could be super wealthy and perfect. So I don't know why they don't go public, because I think the way the fans are at the moment, they might get behind a different bid. So I don't know why it's not been revealed. There is talk of 4 or 5 bids, but there's definitely a third bid there that's always been there, that it won't come public. Now, it was a soft deadline last night, so maybe that third bid is holding off. Maybe they're thinking of pulling out. Maybe they're putting some final things on it. You can still bid for Man United. It's a soft deadline, which means that it's not definitive. At the end of the day, the Glazers want the best price they can get. So the bigger the bidding war, the better the price they get. There is a third bid. Whether we'll ever find out who it is, whether they're going to follow through on it, we'll have to just wait and see. So there's what's next is, I think there's a few more weeks of finding out. And I wouldn't rule out that third bid, and I wouldn't rule out Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Glazers have to sell now, given the wordings of the bids. Also, have they only received these bids, or are there any from minority stake? Well, I'm hoping we're going to get more clarity in United 2004, but I don't know. If Qatar Getters will change his name to Corporal King, it says Paul. Miguel Delaney is just salty because he put out an article yesterday afternoon that there was going to be no bid from Qatar. Look, I don't know Miguel Delaney. I don't know a lot of these journalists. I'm sure they work really hard and they're all entitled to an opinion. But the thing about opinions is, if people don't agree with your opinion, you're going to get a lot of stick. If they do, you're going to be a hero. People will drive cars using oil phones built by slaves, watch a World Cup in Qatar, but buying a football club is too far, says Jay. Thanks for the daily content, Mark, says Ricardo. And could it be Scholars, Neville's, etc. for the third bid, says Darren Mullaney. Well, look, it's not my place to say what journalists or anybody else say. Can I just hit this head on here? Sports washing. I've described what sort of sports washing is. Some people don't know what it is. It's not when you get home from a football match and it's been muddy and you put your kit in the washing machine and you wash it. That is a form of sports washing. This is not what we're talking about. Sports washing is when undesirable billionaires, states, countries use their wealth on popular things to make themselves be more appealing, right? I say undesirable because someone's hero is someone's villain, and someone's villain is someone's hero. So basically, Man City, Newcastle, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia have been accused of sports washing in the past because the regimes, the countries, their way of life is seen as undesirable by certain people in the West, and therefore sports washing is when people who have got money in those countries buy things like football clubs to make them feel more appealing instead of not being appealing. That's what sports washing is. So when Miguel Delaney or anybody else says that Manchester United being bought by Qatar is sports washing, you can see why they're saying that, because they're saying, well, Qatar has questionable ways of life and human rights and everything else that they get accused of. Buying Manchester United, a global Western brand, makes them more appealing because it's a positive connection to Qatar. And that's what sports washing is in many people's minds. Is that right? Is that wrong? We're not having that debate. I'm just telling you what sports washing means. When Qatar put a statement out yesterday saying they don't want to make any money out of Manchester United, they just want to spend and make Man United great again and invest in the community and buy players and build a stadium, but they don't, and they're going to clear the debt and they don't want any money themselves. That's when you're going to get accused of sports washing, because it's like you're basically just buying Man United, throwing money at it to make yourselves popular, and you don't even want to make any profit from it. That's why they'll get accused of sports washing. It can also be accused. There's another word for it as well. I think it's called philanthropy, where rich people do things because not for profit. They do it because they want to do something positive. They genuinely want to do something positive. One person's sports washer is another person's philanthropist, and I can't even say the word. So, look, everyone's got their own choice to make here, but I look around. I see a lot of excitement. I look around. I see a lot of concern. And I look around and I see a lot of people accusing me of being pro-Qatar, and I also see people saying I'm pro-Sir Jim. So I suppose I'm doing the right thing, really. I'm doing what I want to do, which is just not be swaying one way or the other, because I don't know which way this is going to go, and I think that ultimately you could be setting yourself for a lot of disappointment if you particularly want something and then you get the other. But what I will go back and say is that without a shadow of a doubt, we are about to hit enormous change at Manchester United. Manchester United owned by Qatar is something we never would have expected to see. A club that is so wealthy, it can do anything it wants. And on top of that, we're not Man City and Newcastle. Our revenue is huge. I mean, Man City's revenue is huge, but I think there's a problem with how they've made it huge. Our revenue is huge. We're playing well, with super wealth, a huge stadium. You know, domination is possible, but in a way where we've all got to swallow the hypocrite's pill as well. I'm not going to hide away from this, by the way. Let me just read these chats and I'll come back to that. Do you think the Glazers will sell to Sir Jim out of spite, says Julian? Well, again, like, why not? That they can sell to whoever they want. My big fear is that if Sir Jim Ratcliffe buys United, he might put us into the Super League because of his connections with JP Morgan, says Dylan. Anyone who thinks Qatar will run it like Sir Jim is in cloud cuckoo land. We'd be in the Super League with 10 managers in a decade with 45 Galacticos, says Robert McCormack. On a darker note, Sir Jim is 70 years old. Realistically, how long can he healthy run as maybe his children take over and run as badly, says Bruce Wayne. And how is Sir Jim going to invest in the stadium and facilities whilst also investing in the team if he's buying the club on debt? Also, won't Ineos own the club? Investors will want to return, says Gopal. And Chris Rowan, thank you for joining the members club. Can somebody just remind me about the hypocrite story? Because I want to come back to that. But I think there's some great points in here, and this is why I like to do it. Mark, the third bid is coming in from Saudi Arabia. I read some reports last night. I don't know about that. I've heard a few things. And United might just be an expensive hobby for them. Also, I hope they do not adopt the Galactico model. It was needed for PSG to get viewers, but not here, says Julian. I think that there is concerns with both bids, and it's got nothing to do with human rights. I think there are concerns about sports washing and human rights. Of course there are. I can't deny that there are. There are. For some people, they're not bothered. For some people, it's rip your season ticket up time. I don't want to support the club. I get that. But let's move away from that for a moment. I think there are concerns on a sporting side from both bids. And I think some people have raised some really important points there. I do not want to see Qatar run Man United like they've run PSG. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know whether anyone from Qatar is watching, but the way you've run PSG, I think I could have run it better. I think you got it completely wrong. You followed the Real Madrid model from the early noughties. You never should have done that because it didn't work for Real Madrid and it was never going to work for you. You spent a lot of money and you wasted it. You got it wrong. You know, somebody somewhere in that PSG setup was given too much power and didn't have enough football knowledge. So you don't want that at Man United. And we sort of had that with Ed Woodward in many ways, and Richard Arnold and John Murtagh and the Glazers. There has been money spent; it's been spent badly. So we're also an example of you can spend $1 billion over 10 years and basically chuck it on a bonfire. So I don't want that, and hopefully that wouldn't happen under Qatar ownership. Going back to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, to be even-handed here, some great points in the chat. So the debt he's going to take on will not be taken on by the club; it'll be taken on by Ineos. If I buy Man United and I own another company, and to buy Man United, I take debt and put it onto my company, my shareholders of my company are going to go, when are you paying that back then? And where are you getting the profit to pay that back? Well, we'll pay it back off our own profits. What, so you can buy Man United? How's about you give us the profits from Man United to pay the debt? I don't mind Man United not being in debt, but if we're taking the debt for you to buy Man United, you can give us the profits of Man United to pay the bloody debt off. That's where I'm confused. Now, I might be misreading that. Maybe Ineos are saying, yeah, we'll take the debt on to buy Man United and we will pay the debt back and Man United can just thrive. Maybe that is an option. But you know what? Where's the clarity on that? Where's the promise on that? That's important. Also, second thing, if you're taking debt on to buy Man United through Ineos, how are you building a stadium that's going to cost over $1 billion? Where's that coming from? Where's the money coming from that? Man United's revenue by any chance? Oh yeah, I thought so. And where are you going to get the money to back Eric Ten Hag? If you're taking debt on from Ineos to buy Man United, where's the where's your extra money that you're going to pump in to buy players? Oh, you're not going to, are you? It's going to be our revenue again, which is all fine and well. Man United can operate off their own revenue if we're debt free. But I'll repeat again, our revenue is about 600 million. Our wage bill and everything is north of 400 million. So our profit is about 200 million on a good year. 200 million is not enough to rebuild this football club. You've got to build a stadium out of that, and you've got to buy players every year. We will operate and we will be competitive, but it's not the wealth required. So I think you look at Sir Jim and you go, putting the Manchester back into Manchester. Well, you know, does that offend foreign fans? Does that offend people outside of Manchester? Doesn't offend me. I mean, it can mean many things, putting the Manchester back into Manchester. Some people will think it means we're only focused on Manchester. Some people think, well, you know, we were Brandchester United under the Glazers, so putting the Manchester back into Manchester United means we're going to be Manchester United again, which is what we are. So I don't see an issue with that. Some people might. But what I do say is, I personally have said this before, and it's got nothing to do with being pro-Qatar. I do not want Manchester United to be morally run. That's my opinion. And I don't express many opinions about this, but I've always said that. I don't want Manchester United to be morally run because football's not moral. I was having an argument last night with a family member, right? They were talking to me about Qatar. They don't know anything about football. And they said, oh, I didn't like the World Cup being in Qatar, and I don't really think Man United should be owned by Qatar. And I said, great point. What? Tell me why. I can't wait to listen to this one. And they said, because, well, it's all the stuff that goes on in the Middle East. You know, they're anti this, they're anti that. You know, it's sports washing. You know, it's just not very moral. And I went, I don't disagree with that stance if you want to take that stance. But I'll tell you what's that got to do with Manchester United? Well, you shouldn't be owned by that. What's it got to do with Manchester United? You want Manchester United to make a moral stand when there's already 4 or 5 clubs owned by people from that area of the world. And there'll be loads more. So Man United should make a moral stand for the rest of humanity whilst everybody else around us gets bought by billionaires like Middle East, China and everywhere else. What? Man United making a moral stand for what? That horse bolted years ago. There is no morality in football. Let's be honest, there is no morality. It winds me up that people think we are moral in football. We're not. We'll sell our soul for anything collectively. I'm not talking about me individually or you individually, but as a whole, football is immoral. The World Cup was in Qatar. There were pundits gobbing off for 2 years. Oh, it shouldn't happen, it shouldn't happen. They were over there being paid to be there in November. Oh, yeah, we're so moral. Mason Greenwood. People are saying, oh, put him back in the team tomorrow. Put him back in the team tomorrow. There's huge moral questions about that, and you all know there is, but some people would put him back in the team tomorrow. So, Man United shouldn't be bought by Qatar because it's immoral. Oh, but Man City have been run by Abu Dhabi for the last 14 years. There's no morals in football. And the sooner that there are people in football who have morals, I like to think I have them, I'm sure many of you do, but football in general is immoral, and it has been for a long time. FIFA, that Qatar World Cup never should have happened. Not because of Qatar, but just because of how it was given. Everybody knows about the backhanders and all sorts of stuff that have been going on for years. Football is not immoral, it is about money. That's all it is about. So I find it funny that people want to make Manchester United some sort of scapegoat for morality when there has been there is no morality in football. It doesn't bloody exist. Maybe it should. But it doesn't. It doesn't. And I'll argue that with anybody. I don't care who you are. Ex-player, president of FIFA, journalist. Don't talk to us about morals because it doesn't bloody exist. And it hasn't done for years. And I wish it did. I wish football was less corrupt than it actually is. But the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, young players who get given millions of pounds before they've even kicked a ball, and the stuff, the backhanders that go on in youth football to get people to play, and then they wonder why they end up doing things like we read about because they're treated like gods at 14 years of age to get them to sign with this club or get them to sign with that agent. There is no morals in football. There is one God in football, and it is money. Money. So to start accusing Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi or China or America or anything else is ridiculous, because there is no morals in football. And if there is, please tell me, because I tell you what, I'd love to see the evidence. So everybody telling Man United that they should be moralistic about a bid from Qatar is a joker. And correct me if I'm wrong, I just watched the World Cup in November that was in Qatar, that everybody watched, that all the broadcasters put out there, that everyone kept trying to ram down our throat was the best World Cup ever. Oh, isn't it great that Messi's finally won a World Cup? Where did that World Cup take place? Qatar. Did anyone stop it? No. It happened. It was wall-to-wall TV, right in the middle of a season. The reason United are playing a game every 3.5 days is because we had a World Cup in Qatar that the football authorities wanted us to have. The reason United's season could burn out is because we're having to play from the start of August to the end of May 3 times a week because of a World Cup in Qatar that everybody in football made sure happened. But no, Man United can't be owned by Qatar. Oh no, it's immoral. It's so immoral. You cannot be owned by Qatar. And yet, we've literally just had a World Cup there 2 months ago, not in the summer, smack in the unprecedented winter. So look, you can choose what you want, and that's not me being pro-Qatar. That's just me being a little bit frustrated with the moral crusaders who are trying to pretend that this is the very first investment in football from the Middle East. We've just had a bloody World Cup there that everybody knew about for 6 years, and it happened. I like how instead of acknowledging that you were against Newcastle takeover and now you want to switch narrative to, well, should we just sit there, makes protesting against Super League pointless. It's dystopia. I'm going to talk about the hypocrisy in a minute. Thank you very much. Radcliffe has rat in his name, not for me. Come on, I don't like the abuse that Sir Jim Radcliffe's getting, by the way. We're better than that. I said something on Twitter yesterday that, you know, borderline racism towards Qatar, we're better than that as well. And we're also better than having a pop at Sir Jim. That's just divisive when you don't need to be. Respect your fellow fan. We are Manchester United. If somebody wants Qatar, maybe understand why they want Qatar, even if you're dead against it. If someone wants Sir Jim, maybe understand why they want Sir Jim, even if you're dead against it. Slagging each other off. Have we not had enough of that over the last 10 years? Personally feel they're jealous, which is why they don't want us to be owned by Qatar. Oh, David, look, I've just done a video on That's Football about this. Div has just gifted 10 memberships, by the way. JP Morgan aided individuals in the Epstein scandal. There's just as little morality in the West as there is in the Middle East, says Div. Well, I don't know about that, Div, but look, what I will say is that, you know, when we're searching for morality in football, they're like two magnets going together. You can push them as much as you like, but they won't go together. Morality in football, morality and money. You know, everybody's got a fingerprint on something. Look, if I've got £1,000 in my savings account, and I wish I bloody did, I guarantee that's being invested into things that probably morally are dubious, you know? China have human rights issues as well. Can a person survive in today's world without using Chinese products, says Shahan. I do want to just very quickly talk about this. I think it's very, very important. And I'm glad that people are resonating what I've just said there. You can clip that up, because that's not pro-Qatar and it's not pro-Sir Jim. That's just the world we live in. I don't like football. I love football, but I don't like football. That's hypocritical. Well, it is. Watch my video on That's Football. There's a little story about how I was introduced to football when I was like 6 and how I consumed football. And I loved it. Even though I had a little glimpse of what you get. You get the world. You get the internet. I didn't have any of that. And I loved football for its purity in the late 80s. It wasn't brandable. There wasn't loads of money in it. You know, the local accountant probably owned the football club. That's what it was. And I loved football. And I still love football now. I don't like what football's become. It's become brandified. It's become, even players are more interested in their brand sometimes than their performance on the pitch. But I'm not going to walk away from football because I love it. But I don't like where football's gone. But I can't stop it. And you can't stop it. And the people who run football are like the same people who run governments. Look at history. You know, people like you and me, we've gone to war and died over the years because people in power decide they don't like that or they want that. We are powerless in this. The way that football's grown, we are powerless. And there are no morals in football when it comes to money, because that is their God. That is what they are chasing. And we all know it. And when you realise that, I find it a lot annoying when people start telling fans how to think when we've got no say in it anyway. And ultimately, we've got no say in this anyway. The Glazers will decide. Mark, if we was to terminate unwanted players' contracts to reduce the wage bill, does that go towards financial fair play? I don't know myself. It's an interesting one. Old Trafford needs renovating. It's too iconic to knock down, says Jamie. I'm with you on that, Jamie. I don't want Old Trafford knocking down. Playing devil's advocate, perhaps the Man United continuous support and transparency with the Premier League could show proper morals to QATAR, says Derek. Look, I had that chat last night. I want to hit this on because I'm not going to hide it. So many new... And this is a question to you as much as it's a question to me, everybody. Newcastle fans and Man City fans are pulling out old tweets and saying you're a bunch of hypocrites. You've slagged us off because we've got oil money and we're cheat codes and everything like that. And now you're all going oil me up and this, that, and the other. And the people are actually saying it in the chat. Charlie Max says United's revenue combined with super wealth would really put us in a fantastic position. Some would say unfair, but I don't care, says Charlie. So where do we stand on that? Are we going to go through our deleted? Are we going to go through our tweet history and delete tweets? Are we going to pretend that we never said that Man City and Newcastle are basically cheats because they've got so much money and no one else has got that money? Are we going to go back on the things that we said that, you know, their success, it doesn't matter because they're so rich? I'm not going to hide what I said before. Manchester City were jammy. They were a nothing club. It could have been Everton, could have been Aston Villa. I think they actually looked at Everton and Aston Villa, Abu Dhabi actually. They chose Man City. Man City were a nothing club. They weren't Arsenal, they weren't Man United, they weren't Liverpool, they weren't Chelsea, they weren't winning Premier League titles, and now they are. And they're winning titles because they won the lottery. They did. They were very, very lucky. Newcastle are the same. They weren't winning titles. I can't remember the last time they won a trophy. And they won the lottery. I was completely bitter and jealous, and I admitted it. We all, you know, I'm not a hypocrite. I was bitter and jealous. And when in that bitterness and jealous, I slagged them off because that's all we've got as football fans. I bantered them. But where was I wrong? Newcastle and Man City, without that wealth, would be back in the mid-table, fighting relegation, whatever. They did win the lottery. They were lucky. I was bitter and I was jealous like everybody else. And that's exactly how everybody else feels this morning. They'll talk about morals again. They'll talk about everything else, but they're bitter and jealous. And I was bitter and jealous about Newcastle and Man City. I admit it. I didn't like it. But I've just said, I don't really like the super wealth in football anyway. But I tell you what, have we not also discussed for the last 3 years, if we want to win the Champions League or we want to win the Premier League, the only way to do it is to get super wealthy like Newcastle and Man City. So you two started it. Everyone else has got to copy you because otherwise you're going to dominate football. Do I like that way? No. Was I jealous and bitter and said things about Newcastle and Man City? Yes. Am I comfortable with Man United being owned by super wealthy billionaires? Not really. Do I think it needs to happen? 100% yes. Do I want Manchester United to win Premier League titles? Yes. Do I think there's any other way? No. Is it my fault? No. Is it your fault? No. Is it Man City's fault? No. Is it Newcastle fans' fault? No. If you want to win, you better get yourself somebody who's super wealthy to own your club. Man City started it. Everyone else has got to copy it. Look at how many Premier League titles Man City won before 2009. Look at how many they've won in the last 14 years. There's one reason for that: super wealth. Newcastle are going to go straight down that path as well. Are we just going to sit back there and go, I don't want that. I'd rather just take part. Of course there's hypocrisy. Of course there is hypocrisy. And a lot of it was bitterness and jealousy. And a lot of it's bitterness and jealousy towards us now. So Newcastle fans, Man City fans, you can pile in and go, oh, you were slagging us off, but you're not now. And what's your point? We were bitter and we were jealous, and you were doing it on a cheat code because you had more money than anyone else. And maybe we're going to have some money now, and maybe we have to use the same way that you've done to do it. But it'll become less and less of a cheat code the more and more people have money. I think the way it's going to go, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal are going to have to do what we're doing. Because otherwise, you're not going to be in the top 4 anymore. Spurs, forget about it. Liverpool, forget about it. Chelsea are super rich. They've just spent £300 million in January. Man City are super rich. Newcastle are super rich. If we're going to join that club, that's your top four for the next 10 years. I'm sorry. You might occasionally get a Liverpool in there because they've got a very good manager. But if Liverpool, Arsenal and Spurs want to be in that top four, you better get some super rich owners, because Chelsea just spent £300 million in January. United could be bought by Qatar, and Newcastle and Man City ain't going anywhere. That's football. That's where we are now, isn't it? The question is, do you want a new owner to clear the full debt and buy as great players, or owner like Sir Jim, who's going to clear, who not clearing the debt, says Darren. Well, we don't know enough about anybody's bid, really. I think that's the thing at the moment, which is why I won't commit to what I want. How can you support the Qatar takeover but don't support Greenwood coming back, says John. Do you want to just put words in my mouth, John? I don't remember committing to either of those things either. I haven't said I want Qatar, and I haven't said I don't want Mason Greenwood back. I've said that I think everybody personally has got to take their own mind and think about it. The dangerous thing is, if you 100% get behind a Qatar bid and then Sir Jim Radcliffe buys the club, what are you going to do? Protest? Like, I get the excitement, but I still feel it's Christmas Eve. I'm not opening my presents yet. If you want to, that's fine. I think there's so much to digest. I think it is exciting, but there is a danger of it's not like Ten Hag against Poch. People keep saying this is a bit like Ten Hag against Poch. All the media, the journalists, they want Sir Jim, and and a few fans, but the vast majority of the fan base want Qatar. And look who was right on Ten Hag and Poch. It's nothing like that, really, if we're honest, is it? This is like jumping blindly off a cliff. Nobody knows what the future holds. What owner ever gets 100% backing from the fans year in, year out? It's very rare. And I think that for me, it's about assessing what happens. I hope there is a third bid that's attractive, but I'm not afraid to say what I want. But I think that at this moment in time, it's a little bit dangerous because you just don't know what the Glazers are going to decide. And look, if I said I really, really want Sir Jim to get hold of the club and then Qatar get the club, then I'm in a situation where I'm disappointed. If I say I really, really want Qatar, I really want this super wealth, and I think they'll do a job for us that already is being done at Man City, and on a footballing level, that's what we need, and then Sir Jim gets hold of us, you're going to be disappointed. I think the best public statement that's been put out is Qatar last night. I think Sir Jim could have done it better and probably should do it better. I don't like the idea of, borrowing money in any sense of form to buy a football club when another bidder is saying there will be no debt and they'll just invest. But ultimately, the Glazers will decide and we'll have to live with it. How many people used Qatar Airways before? Did you make a moral decision then? Says Mo. Mark summed up perfectly when it comes to morality. Exploitation exists in every walk of life, from the clothes you wear on your back to minimum wage. Says it's Froggy Gaming. 100%. Even just something basic like the milk you buy or the eggs you buy. There's a moral decision there. I mean, free-range eggs where chickens are running around in a bloody field, or the cheaper eggs where their life's a bloody misery and they're in a bloody pen for the whole life. I know that's animal welfare, but it's still a moral choice. Do you think about that when you're buying your eggs from Sainsbury's? Who owns Sainsbury's? Who's the investors in Sainsbury's? I mean, you probably can track that back to the Middle East as well. It's just, moral decisions only... I think there's a thin line between morality and bitterness. And look, I ain't got no problem with people making moral decisions. I was reading about an athlete from the UK who refuses to fly and will travel across Europe, I think on a bike or something like that. You can laugh at them, but at least they won't make that decision. That's a moral decision, isn't it? We want Ganachos, not Galacticos. Great points tonight, Mark. Keep it up, says David. Mark, how can you want wealthy owners and not support communism, says Ike. There's been some interesting chats today accusing me of many things that I haven't said. I think having an open mind and trying to understand both sides is very very difficult. But I think we have raised some good points this morning, and hopefully it's got a few people thinking. One thing I always said was that there's two things I've said, and therefore by I mean we, because we're a live interactive community. So what did I say in July? I said I think Man United will be sold very soon. I just had a feeling it was going to happen, and lo and behold, it has happened. And the second thing I've said is that when we are sold, there's going to be huge divisions in the fan base. And I think at the moment, I mean, what does the Manchester United Supporters Trust think? What does the Red Army think? You know, I know what this community thinks, but what does Gary Neville think? You know, I'm trying to think of people who've been publicly vocal about the Glazers, about the Super League. I'm not saying that their opinions matter any more than anybody else's opinion, but at the moment, I think there is this sort of, everyone's just taking a step back and just seeing what happens, because you don't want to start getting angry about something that might not happen. Maybe the Glazers do have a great relationship with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Maybe he's going to chuck them a little bit of a silent 10%. Maybe Qatar are going to chuck them a private 15%. I mean, who knows? We're acting like we decide. What if Qatar said, we will keep, you can have a quiet private 10% and we'll give you a dividend of 10 million every year to let us buy the club. But Sir Jim's like, no, I'm not going to give you anything. And then Qatar gets the bid from the Glazers. What do you think about that then? Or what if it happens with Sir Jim and not with Qatar? You see what I mean? There's things that we might not even bloody know about. And why would we know? Because the bids aren't coming into our email inbox. So I think, for me, it's about just trying to be level-headed on this. But there are certain things that I want, and it has to be super wealthy, and it has to be debt-free, and that has to be when the club. I don't care how much the Glazers get. If the Glazers get 5 billion, off you go, never come back. But there's got to be another 10 billion coming in for the club. I don't want somebody to mortgage themselves up to the hilt to get hold of the club and then go, look at me, I've rescued Man United, I've got no money to spend and I'm in debt, but I've bought us. I'd go, thanks for fucking us over. Like, we didn't need some hero to get the Glazers gone and then have no money. We needed somebody to buy the bloody club and then have a load of money to spend on it. You know, I'm not that, I am desperate for the Glazers to go, but we're not in that position anymore. We're not in the position where at any cost, let's get hold of United and then be in debt again. Like, we need super wealth. It's sad but true. James says, lucky with titles, but having charges hanging over City's head shows the danger of these turning around and going wrong with owners chucking cash, says James G. Apart from the initial investment in stadium repairs, clearing the debt and building a squad, United don't need a lot of investment. United are self-sustainable, otherwise just need sensible owners. I disagree with that, Amy. I disagree with that. The debt is half a billion. The stadium is about 2 billion. And the squad needs about another billion spending on it. So you're talking about £3 billion there. How are we self-sustainable when you need £3 billion? We only make profit of about £200 million a year on a good year. It's going to take you over about 15 years to get £3 billion from self-sustainability. And you're also competing with Man City, who apparently, I read something this week, spent £180 million on the Haaland deal. 55 million release clause and about £100 million in other fees to other people. So that would be all of our profit for 1 year just to buy an Erling Haaland. Mark, everyone is just afraid we would reach the pinnacle and make everyone look at us with awe. That's where all this morality is coming from. Thanks for all the good work, says Sujit. And Ike, I'm gonna have to block you, mate. I don't study communism, and I am not a communist. You know, sometimes free speech is a thick thing, isn't it? Mark, I can't lie. What Qatar said in their statement gets me excited, but who else is bidding? I'd be very surprised if it's just Sir Jim and Qatar. Well, as we wrap it up there, Owen, I have got the Leicester preview coming up for you later. Don't forget, I'm on Talk Sport tonight. I think this is going to be a very interesting Talk Sport show, 7:30 till 9 o'clock. Obviously, the day's Premier League action will be discussed, but I think we might get a few calls about Qatar, and I think I might get a few tasty calls from rival fans. But look, I'm also going to be doing Arsenal against Aston Villa at 12:30 on That's Football as a watch-along. A big day of Premier League action. Of course, Man United play tomorrow, but there are bigger things to discuss. As I go back to the start of the show, there is a third bid for Manchester United. I don't know who it is. I don't know whether it's going to go in, but there is a third serious bid that was expected to go in last night that hasn't gone in as far as we know. Is it still going to go in? Have they been put off by Qatar? Are they just staying quiet? Are they going to put it in a couple of days? I still expect that to come in, and so does everybody who's close to it expect. So let's see who that is. I mean, it might be a disappointing bid. It might be a really exciting bid. This isn't a cheat code. This is reversing 17 years of damage from the scumbags running the club. Clear the debt and sort the infrastructure out and we'll fly, says Lee Geldart. And I can't lie, because I've done that from Owen. You know what? That's an interesting point by Lee as well. Let's not forget that over 17 years, we've been paying debt repayments and dividends. You add that all up, you've got to be you've got to be north of $1 billion, maybe even more. Somebody would do the maths. I don't know. How much money have we spent in 17 years on debt repayments and dividends that we never would have spent if we'd been not bought by the Glazers? We never should have spent on dividends and debt repayments. If that's $1 billion, if that's $2 billion, it's money that should have been in the club. What could we have done with another £2 billion? Build a really good stadium, invest in the club. People forget that. The billions that have been wasted by the Glazers on dividends and debt repayments, that was our money. It was our revenue. They've never put a bloody penny in. They've kept us in debt and they've took dividends on our money. Manchester United's money. So people talk about oil money and, you're selling your soul and this, that and the other. It's a great point by Lee. It's not a cheat code what we're about to do. It's putting right the wrongs of the last 17 years. It's getting the money back that we should have bloody had in the first place. We could have built a super stadium and we could have built a super squad. We've lost billions because of the Glazers and it was our money. How can he compare what Mason Greenwood did and backing the owners? And I think it's sick to say that and disrespectful, like generally disgusting. Oh, there's some disgusting people out there, says Nathan anyway. After reading the statement from Qatar, I'm sold, says Steve. I want them to own the club. Too much hurt we've suffered from the Glazers. Anyway, look, we could talk and talk and talk. I hope you all have a good day. I will put the Leicester preview out. Obviously, if anything happens, we will react. And I'm on That's Football at 12:30 for the Arsenal-Villa game, where I'm sure a lot of this debate will continue. And obviously, don't forget TalkSport on YouTube and on national radio, 7:30 tonight till 9 o'clock. You can call in and have your say if you want. Have a great day, everyone. I think we raised some good points. I think the thing that resonates for me, and sometimes these shows take you into places because I don't script it. I don't look at a bit of paper. I haven't even got a pen. It takes you into places you never know you're going to go. And I think the most important thing really is, why are people talking about morals in football? There aren't any. There's no morals in football. Speak to you later.